Sir, do you want to be made well? A lot of people just read over that. Or if they look at it, they're like, that's a very strange question. Why would you ask a paralyzed person, do you want to be made well? And then, of course, Jesus healed him, and Bob's your uncle, and just another day in the life of Jesus. Jesus is so powerful that one time it says, speaking of Nazareth, his hometown, he went to Nazareth and he could do no mighty miracle there because of their unbelief. And people would stop right there and close their Bible, but it goes on to say he could do no mighty miracle because of their unbelief, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. Like, hashtag no big deal. Like, the worst day for Jesus is better than the best Monday for any Journey of Hope service we've ever had. The worst day for Jesus is better than most Sunday mornings at any church in the country. It's like, yeah, I can't do any mighty miracle because of their unbelief, except I'm going to heal a bunch of people. He says to this guy, do you want to be made well? And that's something that the Lord's been speaking to me as somebody who did suffer from chronic depression for 10 years. This is something the Lord spoke to me. Ben, do you want to be made well or no? And you know what? Sometimes in the past I've said no. For 3 reasons. Number 1, I thought I'd rather make a difference and be miserable than have fun and do nothing, which was a weird mindset that I got from Achilles, Homer's Iliad. Number 2, I thought I'm going to wear my depression like a badge of honor. That's a subtle one, isn't it? We walk around and we wear our pain like a badge of honor. Amen. And we're always drudging up the past. And we're saying, yeah, I'm really deep. I'm really spiritual because I'm really depressed. It's like, where did I get that idea? Number 3, because victims get attention. I might be cutting deep tonight for some people. You're like, ooh, that one hurts a little bit. Listen, this is what happened to me. Just hear my own story. Do you want to be made well? I kind of like the attention that depression gets me. I kind of wear it like a badge of honor, pride. And number 3, well, if I want to make a difference, I have to be miserable. It's like, the way we treat God, if God were a human, we would throw him into jail. Like the authorities would throw him into jail. We're like, God is the reason you're sick. God is the reason you're suffering. God is the reason you're scraping boils off your skin with a piece of pottery. It's like, did you read the story? That was Satan, not God. God is better than you think. God is not the cause of evil. God is light. There's no darkness. God is not the cause of suffering. The joy of the Lord is your strength. He is out to beat the enemy, and that's what we want to do as hope dealers. We defeat the enemy in our generation. Can I get an amen? God's better than you think. So the question is, do you want to be made well? So notice what he says. Hear me. I know I'm going a little longer tonight, but listen, I've gone 24 minutes every Monday night for the past 2 months. So will you give me a few more minutes, 7 more minutes? Is that okay? Okay, listen. Are you guys doing okay? Okay, listen. Our present sufferings are nothing to be compared with the weight of glory. Now, Peter the apostle said, do not be surprised by the fiery trial which is to test your faith, knowing that the trying of your faith produces patience and makes your faith gold to burn away all the dross. Now listen, he compared suffering to a fiery tribulation. Isn't it interesting how our sun, the very engine of life for our solar system, this G2 dwarf of hydrogen and helium, is actually, listen, a burning fireball. And people who believe in evolution say our planet only has 4 to 4.5 billion years max before the Earth is swallowed up by this sun. But the sun is this massive fireball that floats out in space, and the gravity well causes all of the planets to be caught up in its orbit. Now listen, if you compare this fireball to planet Earth, it is so big, you can't even fathom how big the sun is. Did you know that if you were to hollow out the sun, you could fit 1.3 million Earths inside? Everybody say 1.3 million Earths. Okay, so that's how big the sun is. 1.3 million Earths fit inside. Now, if you compare Earth to this fireball out in space, it's huge, the sun is. But if you juxtapose and compare the sun with Canis Majoris, which is the largest star, bigger than Antares, bigger than Epsilon, bigger than the G2 dwarf. It's this star called Canis Majoris. If you compare Earth with Canis Majoris, pardon me, if you compare the sun with Canis Majoris, the sun is a pygmy pipsqueak. Okay, ready? Drum roll, please. This is nutty. Drum roll, please. How many Earths can fit inside the sun? 1.3 million. But guess how many suns, as big as it is, can fit into Canis Majoris? If you hollowed out Canis Majoris, the biggest star we've discovered, 9.2 billion. Suns, not Earths, 9.2 billion suns can fit into Canis Majoris, and that's when our brain just shuts off. So if you compare the fiery tribulation that's supposedly going to swallow up the earth to our earth, it's huge. But if you compare the fireball in space with something bigger, it's tiny. The size of the sun is totally relative to what you're comparing it to. Your fiery tribulation and present suffering is big or small compared to what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing your fiery tribulation to this earth, follow me, this world, this life, you above all men will be most miserable. That's what Paul said. If you're just comparing it to this earth, this life, this world, you're going to be above all men most miserable. But if you compare the fiery tribulation in space with something bigger, if you compare your fiery tribulation with the longevity of eternity, Paul says it is a momentary suffering. That's what he told the Corinthians. He said, if you compare it to the weight of glory, it's just a light affliction. When you compare your fiery tribulation with how big God's eternal plan is, you're like, this ain't nothing. You're like, are you silly? I'm still going to send it. I just face planted and I love it. I just face planted on this snow and I have a mullet and I'm Canadian, and are you silly? I woke up from a nap. I'm still going to send it. And you're just so frothy. You're so joyful. You have so much fun because you're like, nothing can take away my joy. I'm just going to keep sending it. I'm going to keep being a hope dealer. I'm going to have joy. Because if I compare this present suffering with the glory that is to be revealed, it's just a light affliction juxtaposed against the weight of glory. And it is but a temporary suffering compared to the longevity of eternity. That's Pauline theology in a nutshell when it comes to trial.